Welcome, listeners, to another deep dive on vibrations and manifestations. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Jared.
I am so glad you're here with us today because, well, I have a bit of a confession about my Tuesday night.
Oh, no. What happened on Tuesday?
Right, so, I try to keep my evening routine super grounded, right? Like making a nice, focused vegan meal to just regulate my nervous system after work.
Yeah, you're usually so intentional about that.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
But I decided for some reason to try making a vegan soufflé.
Oh, wow. That is ambitious.
Ambitious is a generous word. I was standing in my kitchen at like 8:30 at night, just completely covered in chickpea flour.
No.
Oh, yeah. And I'm staring at this totally deflated, just tragic attempt at a soufflé, like a dense hockey puck.
I can picture it perfectly.
Right. And I had followed every single step. I whipped that chickpea water by hand until my forearm literally cramped. I was sweating. I put in maximum raw effort.
But it just didn't rise.
It did not rise. And in that moment of, absolute culinary defeat, I realized something. I was treating my evening the exact same way so many of us treat our careers.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, I was operating under this delusion that if I just applied more sheer physical force, I could bend reality to my will. But it turns out, if you are missing a crucial chemical reaction, no amount of elbow grease is going to fix it.
It's a fundamental chemistry problem, not an effort problem.
Exactly. It was a very humbling Tuesday.
Well, that is such a beautiful and honestly kind of tragic snapshot of the human condition. And it perfectly mirrors this realization I had earlier this week, too.
No, yeah. What happened?
So I was out on a date, which, by the way, trying to navigate the modern dating pool while concurrently taking university classes on human behavior it's basically running a real-time lab experiment on yourself.
I can only imagine. That sounds exhausting.
It really is. But I was sitting across the table from this person at a coffee shop, and they were talking, and I suddenly just tuned into my own physiological state.
Like your nervous system.
Yeah. I noticed my shoulders were creeping all the way up toward my ears. My jaw was clenched so tight. My breathing was incredibly shallow, just, sitting right at the top of my chest.
You're totally braced for impact.
Completely. And I was mentally exhausted, just trying to keep the conversational ball in the air, trying to be perfectly charming, perfectly balanced.
Putting in that sheer effort again.
Exactly. I was putting in so much force to make it work. And I realized my nervous system was in complete overdrive. I was trying to force a connection through tension.
Instead of just seeing if the connection was actually there.
Right. Instead of just regulating myself, taking a breath, and letting myself be a human being, it's wild how deeply conditioned we are to try and control outcomes through brute force effort, isn't it?
It really is. We are so heavily conditioned to think that the harder we squeeze, the more juice we get.
Yes. Tension equals productivity.
Right. And I want you, the listener, to picture a scenario right now, because I am willing to bet you've lived some version of this in the past 48 hours.
Oh, definitely.
You open your phone because you want to figure something out. Maybe you want to invest a little money or market a side business or just find a new morning routine because you're constantly exhausted.
So you do a quick search.
Yeah, you do a search, and immediately you are hit with this tidal wave of conflicting directives.
So the algorithm just attacks you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You read one opinion from some tech bro on a podcast screaming, wake up at 4 a.m., take an ice bath, sleep is for the weak.
And then you swipe down.
You swipe down, and the next video is a soft-spoken wellness influencer saying, hustle culture is dead, prioritize rest, let the universe bring you wealth.
Two completely opposite extremes.
Right. And then you click an article, and a finance guru says neither of those matter. It's all about AI automation and crypto.
And suddenly it's 10 minutes later.
10 minutes later, your heart rate is elevated, you have 24 tabs open on your browser, and you feel entirely paralyzed. You feel way more stuck than when you started.
You feel like you're losing a game, but you don't even know the rules.
Exactly. So what is actually happening there?
Well, I really want to validate that tension right out of the gate. Because when you're sitting there staring at those 24 tabs, feeling that paralysis creep up your spine, it is so easy to internalize it.
You blame yourself.
Right. You think, I just lack clarity. I'm just not disciplined enough to figure this out. But what you're experiencing in that moment is not a lack of intelligence.
What is it then?
It is too many competing inputs fighting for a finite amount of cognitive bandwidth. Your brain is a survival machine, and it's trying to simultaneously process a dozen contradictory survival strategies.
So it just shuts down.
Yeah, it's pure biological system overload.
Yeah.
And that overload is a symptom of a much larger, invisible transition happening in our world right now.
And that system overload is exactly what we are dismantling today. because today's deep dive into our source material is incredibly special.
It really is.
We are looking at a massive stack of sources today, spanning modern economics, the neurobiology of focus, evolutionary psychology, and the grounded science of manifestation.
We're bringing together concepts from the Fourth Industrial Revolution, deep work, polyvagal theory, and leverage.
And our primary mission for this deep dive is to explore this profound shift happening beneath our feet. We are moving from an effort-based economy to a value-based economy.
And we are going to treat this time together like an interactive workshop. This isn't just a lecture where we recite abstract economic theory.
No ivory tower stuff here.
Right. The goal today is to actively debug the obsolete programming you've been carrying around. The programming that tells you exhaustion is a badge of honor.
Because it's not.
It's really not. We want to help you transition to the new currencies of modern existence. And spoiler alert, those new currencies are not the physical hours you punch on a time clock.
So what are they?
The new currencies are attention, energy, and skill. If we can understand how to cultivate and deploy those three things, the entire landscape of your life changes.
Okay, to really understand why we're all walking around squeezing so hard, we have to look at where we came from. We have to look at the old money story versus the new game.
Let's paint that picture because the historical context is essential. If we rewind the clock roughly a century to the height of the industrial era, the world operated on a very visible rhythm.
Right, very tangible.
Exactly. Imagine the sheer sensory weight of that era. You have the sharp smell of ozone, burning coal, machine grease in these massive factories.
You can feel the pounding of the assembly line vibrating through your boots.
Yes. And you have those literal physical time clocks on the wall. You punch them with that heavy mechanical clack when you walk in at dawn and again at dusk.
The equation was incredibly clean back then.
Almost elegant in its simplicity. Physical labor time equals money. Period.
Input directly equals output.
Exactly. You stand at that line and tighten bolts for 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours. You want a radio. You stay and tighten bolts for 12 hours.
It was entirely linear.
Entirely predictable. But then we transitioned into the information era. And the tricky part is, this transition didn't announce itself with a loud factory whistle.
Right, there was no memo.
No memo. It happened quietly. It happened in the soft blue glow of computer screens. Through invisible remote connections, fiber optic cables, servers humming in air-conditioned rooms.
And crucially, it happened through software.
Yes, software that could take one single idea and scale it instantly beyond any physical limit.
The profound tension here is that the fundamental rules of the economic game completely changed overnight, but our cultural messaging didn't?
The bedrock beliefs from our grandparents just didn't update.
No, they didn't. In this new era, the rules decoupled time from income. Suddenly, one person sitting in a coffee shop could write a piece of code, create it exactly once, and sell it to 2 million people while they slept.
But most people didn't notice the rules changed.
No, they kept playing the old game. They kept trying to tighten bolts on an assembly line that no longer existed, and they're left wondering why they're burned out and broke.
This reminds me of that story you told me about your friend a while back.
Oh, man. Yeah, this perfectly and kind of painfully illustrates this dynamic. So I had a friend, I won't use his real name, but he was the absolute hardest worker I had ever met.
Just a total grinder.
The grinder. He was a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing agency, always at his desk at 7:30 in the morning before the lights were fully on.
Wow.
Yeah, and he'd be eating this sad desk salad out of a plastic container at 8 p.m. while the night shift vacuumed around his chair.
That is bone-crushing effort.
Maximum effort. He believed with every fiber of his being that if he just outworked and outsuffered everyone else, the promotions and the money would inevitably follow.
Because that's what the old rulebook promised.
Completely trapped in that illusion. And his realization wasn't some dramatic screaming match with his boss. It was a quiet, devastating Tuesday afternoon.
What happened?
He was looking across the open plan office at another designer. Now, this other designer never stayed past 5 p.m. She didn't hustle. She didn't eat the sad desk salad. But she had spent her quiet evenings at home learning a very specific, niche type of complex 3D animation software that absolutely no one else in the entire agency knew.
Oh, that's smart.
Incredibly smart. When the agency landed a massive tech client who required that exact hyper-specific 3D animation, she was the only human being in the building who could execute it.
So she had immense leverage.
Immense, irreplaceable value. She got the massive promotion, an exorbitant raise, and she still logged off and went home at 5 p.m. every day.
And your friend?
My friend was staring at his glowing screen, exhausted to his core, with this shattering realization that effort alone isn't the lever anymore.
That is such a heavy moment to experience because what he witnessed firsthand was the stark difference between linear output and nonlinear leverage.
She decoupled her earning potential from the ticking clock.
Exactly. She traded a rare skill for disproportionate value.
Okay, but I have to step in and push back on this on behalf of everyone listening.
Go for it.
If I'm listening to this and I've been raised by parents or grandparents who literally survived by the sweat of their brow, people who worked in mills or clean houses,
Right.
and I was taught that grinding is the only honest, morally correct way to make a living, being told that hard work isn't the main lever anymore feels deeply frustrating.
It
It
does.
almost feels insulting. Like, is the universe just punishing people who work hard?
It absolutely feels frustrating.
Yeah.
And we have to pause and validate the grief in that
Yeah.
because it is a legitimate form of grief to wake up and realize a rule book you sacrificed your health for is now obsolete.
It feels like a betrayal.
It does. But here's the crucial reframe. It's not that hard work doesn't matter. The new game doesn't mean we just lie on the couch and wait for checks to arrive.
Right.
Hard work is still the baseline. Effort is the tool you pay to get on the highway. But income, opportunity, and freedom now follow value, not just sweat.
So how do you define the difference there?
Think of it this way. If you spend 80 hours a week sweating in the sun, digging a massive hole in the desert, where absolutely no one needs a hole,
You're exhausted.
you're exhausted, you expended massive effort, but you created zero value. No one is going to pay you for a hole they don't need, no matter how hard you worked on it.
That makes perfect sense.
Every economic shift just rewards new forms of value. Our job now isn't to mourn the closure of the old assembly line. Our job is to understand how to build value in this modern landscape.
So how do we actually do that? Our sources break the modern economy down into three distinct currencies. And the first currency is attention.
Yes, attention. And this is where the science gets incredibly fascinating.
Because it's our most precious finite resource.
Without question. Let me paint another scenario that I think will hit home. Imagine you finally have a quiet hour on your couch. It's Sunday afternoon.
A rare, quiet moment.
Exactly. And instead of resting your brain or reading or learning something, you open a social media app and start doom scrolling.
Oh, we've all been there.
You're watching strangers argue about politics in the comments. You're looking at curated photos of vacations you can't afford. You're absorbing fear-based news.
Just totally dysregulating yourself.
Right. Now, while you are doing this, a subtle, life-changing opportunity might literally be sitting in your email inbox. Or a brilliant creative solution to a problem at work might be floating in your subconscious mind.
But you completely miss it.
You miss it entirely. Your distracted state literally steals the opportunity right out from under you.
It's like a silent robbery happening in your own living room.
Precisely. And this isn't just a poetic metaphor. This is hard neurobiology. To understand attention, we have to talk about a mechanism in the brain called the reticular activating system,
The RAS.
the RAS. It is a bundle of nerves located at the brainstem, and its primary job is to act as a bouncer for your conscious mind.
A bouncer. Okay, how does that work?
Well, right now, in this exact second, millions of bits of sensory information are hitting your brain. The temperature of the room, the hum of the refrigerator, the feeling of your clothes against your skin.
Stuff we aren't even consciously aware of.
Right. If your brain tried to consciously process all 11 million bits of data hitting your senses every second, it would literally crash like an overloaded computer.
So the RAS filters it out.
It acts as a biological filter. It filters out everything it deems unimportant, and it only lets about 40 to 50 bits of information into your conscious awareness.
Wait, it filters out millions and only lets in 50. How does it decide what makes the cut?
It decides based on what you have programmed it to care about.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you focus your attention on, the RAS assumes is critical for your survival.
Oh, wow.
So if your attention is constantly trapped in doom scrolling, if you're constantly focusing on comparison or lack or anger, you are literally programming your RAS to scan your environment for more evidence of lack and anger.
So if a real opportunity passes by...
Your RAS will literally filter it out before it ever reaches your conscious awareness because it doesn't match the anger and lack parameter you've set.
That is terrifying. But it makes so much sense. You know, I love to think of attention like a camera lens.
Oh, I like that.
Imagine you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. You have this magnificent sweeping landscape right in front of you, but you have your camera zoomed in, like extreme macro lens, zoomed in on a single dirty smudge on the window pane of the visitor center.
That's such a good visual.
You could stand there all day staring through that lens and complain bitterly about how ugly and dirty the world is because literally all you can see is dirt.
But the Grand Canyon is right there.
It's right there. You just have to change the focal length of your attention. If you are constantly focused on the dirt, the petty office politics, the unfairness of the algorithm, you entirely miss the landscape of opportunity.
That analogy is brilliant because it highlights agency. You control the focal length. Our sources, particularly works on deep work and focus, emphasize that when you rapidly switch your attention.
Like checking email every 5 minutes while writing a report.
Exactly. When you do that, you leave behind what's called attention residue. A piece of your cognitive capacity stays stuck on the previous task.
So you aren't just distracted, you're depleting your bandwidth.
You're actively depleting it. Attention determines what reality you are permitted to participate in, which leads us directly to the second modern currency, energy.
Because if attention dictates what you see, energy dictates how you engage with it.
Yes. Let's contrast two versions of the exact same person tackling the exact same project.
Okay, version A and version B.
Right. Version A is running on sheer brute force effort. They are chronically burned out. They've had 4 cups of coffee by 11 a.m. Their shoulders are practically stapled to their earlobes.
Shallow breathing, mental fog.
Heavy mental fog. They are staring at a complex spreadsheet, and every single keystroke feels like they're lifting a boulder. They are forcing the work.
And what about version B?
Version B is the same person, same intellect, same task. But version B is in a regulated, grounded state. They slept well, took a 10-minute walk outside, they're breathing deeply into their diaphragm.
They sit down at the computer and the work just flows.
It flows. They see patterns in the data they missed before. They connect dots effortlessly. They work with ease, clarity, and speed. The output isn't just faster, it's exponentially higher quality.
This contrast is where we absolutely must bring in the deeper science, specifically the polyvagal theory.
Yes, developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. This theory is revolutionary because it explains how the state of our autonomic nervous system fundamentally dictates our human experience.
And our cognitive abilities.
Exactly. The nervous system is driven largely by the vagus nerve, which runs all the way from the brainstem down into our gut. When you are operating as version A, you're locked in a sympathetic state.
The classic fight or flight response.
Right. Your body believes, on a biological level, that a tiger is chasing you.
Even if the tiger is just a passive-aggressive email from your boss.
The body doesn't know the difference between a physical predator and a looming deadline. It releases cortisol and adrenaline. And here is the critical part for value creation. When you are running from a tiger, your brain forcefully downregulates the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex being the newest part of the brain.
Yes. It's responsible for deep creativity, nuance, empathy, complex problem solving. But if a tiger is chasing you, you don't need to write a beautiful poem or design software.
You just need to run.
You just need to run. So your brain shuts off access to your best thinking to conserve energy for survival. You literally become functionally less intelligent when you are chronically stressed.
That explains so much. You're sitting there trying to do deep, meaningful work, but biologically, your brain has locked the door to the tools you need.
Precisely. But when you are version B, you are operating in what polyvagal theory calls the ventral vagal state. This is the state of safety, social connection, and physiological regulation.
Your heart rate variability is optimal.
Yes. In this state, your prefrontal cortex is fully online and illuminated. You have immediate access to intuition, flow states, and lateral thinking.
So the quality of your physiological energy directly dictates the quality of your cognitive output.
Absolutely. In a value-based economy, producing one brilliant, game-changing idea while in a ventral vagal state is worth 100 mediocre ideas produced in burnout.
You simply cannot sustain high-value creation if your nervous system is chronically dysregulated, which is honestly such a massive relief to hear.
Right. It gives us empirical biological permission to rest.
Rest isn't a luxury. It isn't laziness. Rest and nervous system regulation are biological requirements for producing high-tier value.
So true.
All right, so we have the first 2 currencies, attention and energy. The third currency is skill. And this is the bridge.
This is how we take our focused attention and regulated energy and actually construct something the market wants.
Skill is the tangible currency of the new economy. Let me share a real-world example synthesized from our research.
Go ahead.
Imagine a person who works a standard administrative job. They decide they are going to quietly, consistently learn one single new high-leverage skill.
Like advanced data analysis using Python or high-level conflict resolution.
Right. They don't quit their job. They don't make a dramatic announcement. They just dedicate 30 protected minutes a day to practicing this specific skill.
And at first, it probably feels painfully slow.
It feels awful. The learning curve is steep. The results are entirely invisible to the outside world. It feels like they're making no progress at all, but they keep at it.
Consistency is key.
Then, 6 months later, a massive crisis happens at their company. A critical client campaign is failing. The data is a mess. Suddenly, this person steps in, runs the script they wrote, parses the data, and identifies the exact bottleneck.
They solve a multi-thousand-dollar problem in an hour.
Overnight, that quiet 30-minute-a-day habit turns into massive, unexpected leverage. They cease to be an expendable administrator and become an indispensable asset.
It's a magic of compounding. We see this deeply analyzed in sources exploring atomic-level habits. Skills are the alchemy that turns raw effort into actual value.
Look at it this way. If you just work incredibly hard at something that literally anyone else can be trained to do in a week.
Your value is permanently capped by the market rate for basic labor.
Exactly. But if you start combining skills, what some call talent stacking, everything changes. Say you're a reasonably decent accountant, but then you also learn how to speak incredibly well in public.
And you learn how to design beautiful data visualizations.
Suddenly, you aren't just a spreadsheet jockey anymore. You are a strategic financial advisor who can present to a board of directors. Your skills compound on top of each other, creating a unique moat around your career.
And this brings us to a really critical juncture: the underlying science and systems of how value is actually created in the brain.
Because we need to look under the hood.
Yes, we need to understand why this compounding effect is so powerful and why it's so hard to start. Because let's be honest, in those first few weeks of learning Python or public speaking, it feels like an absolute slog.
It is a slog. You feel stupid every time you try, you fail. So how do we get past that initial wall of friction?
We have to understand the brain's reward system, specifically dopamine. We hear about dopamine constantly in the modern world, usually in the context of cheap thrills.
Like the dopamine hit of a social media, or online shopping.
Right. But from an evolutionary standpoint, dopamine is the chemical of forward momentum and pursuit. It is not the chemical of pleasure. It is the chemical of anticipation of reward.
Oh, anticipation.
When you sit down, focus your attention, regulate your energy, and successfully learn a new, difficult piece of a skill, your brain experiences what neuroscientists call a reward prediction error.
What does that mean?
If you expect to fail, but you actually figure out the line of code, your brain releases a surge of baseline dopamine.
It creates a biological confidence loop.
Yes, building a skill leads to a micro-result. That tangible result builds your internal belief in your own capability. That belief triggers a healthy, sustained release of dopamine, which neurologically motivates you to take more action tomorrow.
And as you practice, you are physically changing your brain, right?
Exactly. A process called myelination occurs. The neural pathways you're using become wrapped in a fatty sheath called myelin, making those specific signals travel faster and more efficiently.
So the more you build skills, the more capable you feel and the easier the skill becomes.
You literally rewire your neurological hardware to crave the effort of building value, rather than craving the cheap dopamine of a distraction.
And as you build these highly myelinated neural pathways, these unique skills, you start to be able to utilize the ultimate cheat code of the value-based economy.
Leverage.
Leverage. This is a concept explored extensively by thinkers like Naval Ravikant and Tim Ferriss. The core idea is that in the new game, you don't need to inherently do more things.
You need to become more effective at the things you do.
You build systems that create repeatability and scalability. And there are different types of leverage. There's permissioned leverage, like capital, someone has to give you money to invest, or labor, someone has to agree to work for you.
But the skills we're talking about build permissionless leverage.
Yes, code and media. If you learn how to automate a weekly financial report using a script that used to take you 10 grueling hours of manual data entry, you just bought yourself 10 hours of freedom.
You're still delivering the exact same value to your employer. They still get the report, but you've decoupled your time from the output.
You can use those 10 hours to rest, or better yet, to build the next skill.
Leverage is the ultimate multiplier. If skill is the tool, leverage is the heavy machinery. It allows 1 unit of your effort to produce 1,000 units of result.
But let me jump in here and play devil's advocate for a second.
Please do.
Because this all sounds incredibly elegant in theory. Build permissionless leverage, automate your life, talent stack your way to becoming a strategic advisor.
It sounds great on paper.
But how do we balance the desire to build all this beautiful leverage with the harsh, immediate reality that right now, today, I still have to pay my rent? I still have to sit in traffic for an hour. I still have a micromanaging boss. I still have kids crying in the other room who need dinner. I can't just drop my entire life to become a philosopher king of leverage.
That is the most important question we can ask, and it is crucial we ground this in reality. The transition from an effort-based life to a value-based life is exactly that. It's a transition.
It's a process.
It is not a dramatic overnight leap where you burn the boats and quit your job on a Tuesday. The key is to build broad, adaptable skills quietly alongside your daily responsibilities.
As how?
There is a phenomenal concept explored in David Epstein's work on range. He discusses how having a broad range of experiences, trying different things, and building a wide toolkit actually makes you significantly more adaptable and valuable in a complex, unpredictable world.
So you use your current 9-to-5 job as your private laboratory.
I love that framing. The 9-to-5 is the lab. You don't need to escape the job to learn the skill. You use the job to practice the skill.
You practice your new conflict resolution techniques during the incredibly annoying Tuesday staff meeting.
Exactly. You practice your new copywriting skills on the mundane internal company newsletter. You test your data analysis on a low-stakes side project for your manager.
You are actively building your parachute while you are still flying safely inside the plane.
You extract value from your employer in the form of an education while they pay you a salary.
Okay, I have one more pushback.
Lay it on me.
What if I do all of this? I regulate my nervous system, I protect my attention, I build my skills, but what if the algorithm just hates me?
The algorithm.
What if someone else gets the promotion because they play golf with the CEO's son? Doesn't the new economy still rely heavily on luck and nepotism? Doesn't that make the value-based economy just as rigged as the old one?
That is a very fair critique,
Yeah.
and we can't ignore the realities of human networking or algorithmic shifting, but we have to understand how luck actually operates when you possess high leverage.
Ugh.
Thinkers in this space categorize luck into different tiers. Tier 1 is blind luck, finding a $100 bill on the street. You can't control it.
Right.
Tier 2 is active luck, hustling, running around, meeting a ton of people until you stumble into an opportunity. But the tier we are aiming for is prepared luck and ultimately unique character luck.
Prepared luck.
When you build a highly specific, compounded skill set like the 3D animator,
Yeah.
you become a magnet for a specific type of luck. Algorithms change, yes. But if you have the meta skill of learning quickly, you just adapt to the new algorithm faster than anyone else.
And if someone gets promoted through nepotism?
They still need competent people beneath them to actually execute the work, or the whole thing collapses. When you are undeniably skilled, opportunities find you because the market is desperate for competence.
You build a moat around yourself that luck and algorithms can't easily wash away.
Exactly. You move from being a victim of circumstance to being the creator of the circumstance.
And that perfectly sets up the next major piece of this puzzle.
Yeah.
Manifestation integration. And I want to be very, very clear right out of the gate here. When we use the word manifestation, we need to explicitly, firmly reframe it away from the abstract, magical thinking that usually dominates social media algorithms.
Thank goodness we are addressing this head on.
We are not talking about sitting cross-legged on a velvet pillow, lighting an expensive candle, closing your eyes, and repeating, "Money comes to me effortlessly," while you do absolutely nothing else to change your life.
Because that passive, wishful thinking view of manifestation is not only inaccurate, it is entirely disempowering. It puts you back in the waiting room, hoping the universe picks you.
Grounded mechanical manifestation is something completely different. It is tied directly, inextricably to your identity and your behavior.
The core principle here is the identity shift.
The shift is moving from the desperate lack-based mindset of I want a better job or I need more money to the embodied identity of I am becoming someone who creates value consistently.
Precisely. If we examine the core texts of manifestation philosophy, looking at the mechanics laid out by figures like Neville Goddard, the fundamental teaching isn't about wishing for material objects. It's about embodying a specific state of being.
And we can translate this directly into the neuroscience we just discussed.
Exactly. When you shift your identity to, I am a creator of high value, your nervous system begins to align with that reality. Your reticular activating system, that bouncer in your brainstem, receives new instructions.
It stops scanning for evidence of how unfair your boss is.
And it starts actively scanning your environment for unexploited ways to create value. Because your identity has changed, your microactions organically change.
You stop scrolling and start reading.
You stop complaining and start building.
Hmm.
And the results, the opportunities, the income, the recognition naturally follow as a mathematical consequence of your new actions. Money simply becomes a trailing byproduct of the value you inevitably create.
It's the difference between chasing a butterfly and planting a garden so the butterflies come to you on their own.
Oh, I love that.
If you run around the yard with a net, sweating and swinging wildly, that's the effort-based economy. You might catch one, but you'll be exhausted. But if your identity is the garden, the value you build is the flower, and the money is the butterfly.
You can't force the butterfly to land on you.
But you can meticulously tend the soil, plant the seeds, and water the roots.
That is a stunning way to visualize it. Tending the soil is the daily, unglamorous practice of guarding your attention, regulating your nervous system energy, and building your highly specific skills.
Which brings us to the tools and practices. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Yes, let's get practical.
We've talked about the overarching theory, the neuroscience, the economics. Now let's get into the mechanics of your daily life tomorrow morning. I want to introduce a highly practical framework that synthesizes all of this. We call it the value loop.
The value loop is incredibly simple by design, but it requires relentless consistency. It is the engine of compounding value. It consists of 4 distinct steps: learn, apply, improve, repeat.
Let's walk through it step by step. First, you learn. You dedicate a small, fiercely protected block of time, say just 30 minutes a day, to focus on one single skill.
30 minutes is a micro habit. Literally anyone can find 30 minutes.
Even if it means listening to an audiobook on 1.5 speed during your commute, or deciding to skip exactly one episode of whatever reality show you're binging in the evening.
Second, you apply. And this is where most people fail.
You cannot just passively consume the information. You must use it to create friction in the real world. If you are learning copywriting, you write a paragraph.
If you are learning Python, you run a script and watch it break.
If you're learning negotiation, you practice the script out loud in the mirror. Third, you improve. You look at the awful paragraph you just wrote, you see where it was clunky, you figure out why the code broke, and you tweak it.
You invite the feedback. And fourth, you repeat.
That 30 minutes a day might feel totally insignificant on day one. It might feel like you are emptying the ocean with a teaspoon.
But if you execute that loop for 1 calendar year, that is over 180 hours of focused, deliberate practice on a single high-leverage skill.
You will have built a myelinated neural superhighway in your brain.
That level of dedicated practice will completely alter the trajectory of your career.
Okay, now we're going to do an exercise we call manifestation debug mode. Because as you sit there listening to us talk about the value loop, about taking agency, about 180 hours of practice,
There's a very high probability that some internal resistance is popping up in your body right now.
so let's clear that static and tune into the clear frequency.
I want you, the listener, to physically check in with your body right now in this exact moment. As we talk about taking complete ownership of building your skills and creating value, what are you feeling somatically?
Are you noticing a subtle tension in your jaw?
Is there a tightening in your chest or your stomach?
Yeah.
Are you feeling a wave of frustration or maybe a heavy sense of comparison?
Is a voice in your head saying, well, it's too late for me, I'm too old, everyone else is already 10 steps ahead?
Or maybe you realize you are still clinging tightly to that old comforting belief that says, I don't need to put myself through the discomfort of building new skills. I'm a good person who works hard. I just need someone to notice me. I just need a lucky break.
I want to be gentle here, but I also want to be incredibly direct. That feeling right there, that feeling of waiting to be picked, of hoping someone else recognizes your hidden genius, that is the static.
It is.
That is the ghost of the old effort-based programming running in your subconscious. It's the ghost of the factory floor telling you that if you just stand in line long enough and behave yourself, the factory boss will walk by, tap you on the shoulder, and give you a gold star.
But that factory is closed.
Yeah.
So we need to actively install the new code into your operating system. We need to finalize this identity shift.
I want you to mentally, intentionally let go of the idea that life-changing opportunities are handed out based on cosmic fairness or random luck.
The new code is this: opportunities follow value. Let me say that again, let it sink in. Opportunities follow value.
Your new operating system, your new daily mantra is, I build skills that create opportunities.
I build skills that create opportunities. I love the weight of that. It puts the locus of control entirely back in your own hands.
You aren't a victim waiting for rescue. You are an architect building a bridge. To help you integrate this new operating system, we have some critical reflection prompts. I want you to really chew on these later today. Maybe write them down.
First prompt, what skills do you currently possess? What are you already naturally good at, or what have you learned in passing, even if you take it for granted because it feels easy to you?
Second prompt, what is one specific skill that, if you acquired it over the next 6 months, would actively increase your income, your freedom, or your leverage at your current job?
And third prompt, and this requires radical honesty. Where in your life are you currently relying on raw, brute force effort and tension, instead of stepping back, regulating your energy, and creating true value?
Those are heavy, powerful questions. And as a reminder, we will include all of these prompts in our weekly vibe letter, so you'll have them sitting, waiting in your inbox for deeper exploration when you actually have a quiet moment to sit down and journal.
Absolutely. Okay, we have covered a truly massive amount of ground today.
We really have. We've dissected the macroeconomic shift from effort to value. We've explored the neurobiology of how your RAS filters your reality.
We've talked about polyvagal theory, nervous system regulation, and the physiological prerequisites for deep work.
We've broken down the dopamine-driven compounding nature of skills, and we've redefined manifestation as a behavioral identity shift.
Now, it is time to integrate all of this intellectual insight down into the physical body.
Let's do it.
Let's shift the energy of our space right now. I invite you to intentionally slow down your pace. If you are walking outside right now, maybe just soften your stride. Let your feet hit the pavement a little more gently.
If you are sitting down, whether in a car or at a desk, let your physical weight fully settle into the support of the chair.
Notice if you are holding yourself up. Unclench your jaw. Drop your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Let your shoulders slide down away from your ears. Take a slow, deep, intentional breath in through your nose, expanding your ribs. And let it out with a soft sigh.
Just be right here. Nowhere else to go. Nothing else to solve.
I want you to visualize yourself vividly a few months into the future. You are sitting in a quiet, comfortable space. You are in the middle of your 30-minute block. You are learning something new. It's that exact skill you identified just a few minutes ago.
Notice the environment around you in this vision.
The light in the room is soft. The air is calm. Notice the state of your body. There is absolutely no frantic urgency pulsing in your veins. There is no rush to the finish line. There is no heavy blanket of overwhelm. You are simply practicing. You are moving with steady, calm, regulated consistency.
You are physiologically safe.
In this vision, you see yourself making a small mistake. The code breaks, the words don't flow, the data doesn't match. But instead of getting triggered, instead of getting frustrated and closing the laptop, you just calmly notice it and you adjust.
You are watching these tiny micro improvements stack up day by day, week by week.
Feel these somatic sensation in your physical body as this complex skill starts to become second nature. It feels like heavy gears finally clicking into place, well-oiled and smooth. It feels, well, easier.
The friction and the resistance are fading away.
And as you inhabit this new identity, as you deeply feel what it is like to be someone who calmly, steadily, and consistently builds value without drama, you start to notice the landscape of your life changing around you.
Opportunities are naturally arriving. Emails with interesting proposals are coming in. Conversations are opening up in rooms you previously didn't have access to.
And the beautiful part is, they aren't arriving because you frantically chased them down, you didn't force them. They are arriving because you simply became ready for them. The market recognized your competence.
You tended the soil, and the garden grew.
Feel that deep-rooted sense of grounded growth. Feel the quiet, unshakable confidence of forward momentum. I want you to anchor this statement deeply in your mind right now. You are not behind, you are building.
You are not behind, you are building.
Take one more deep, expansive breath into your chest, absorbing that truth into your nervous system. And as you exhale, gently bring your awareness back to the present moment, back to the room you are in.
Wow. Even just walking through that visualization with you, it always shifts something profound for me. It completely recenters my own nervous system. It reminds me that I don't have to force the soufflé to rise.
I'm so glad. It really is a powerful reset.
Okay, let's gently bring the energy back up to a conversational level as we wrap up our time together. We have journeyed through an incredible depth of insight today. To recap the core architecture of what we've discussed, the era of just working harder, bleeding for a company, and expecting the universe to automatically reward your suffering is over.
The game has transitioned.
Income, freedom, and opportunity now strictly follow value. And your capacity to generate value is directly dictated by three levers, where you consciously focus your attention through the filter of your RAS.
How you regulate your physical energy to keep your prefrontal cortex online.
And what highly specific skills you consistently build to create permissionless leverage.
If there is one single soundbite, one absolute, unshakable truth we want you to carry with you as you close this audio, it is this: money follows value, and value is something you can actively, systematically build. It is not a genetic lottery. It is entirely within your agency.
So we have a tangible action step for you this week. It's a simple directive, but it requires actual commitment. We want you to choose one skill. Just one. Don't try to learn 5 things at once.
Pick a skill that would materially improve your life, increase your leverage, or solve a bottleneck in your career.
Spend focused time, even if it is strictly limited to 30 minutes a day, improving it. And here is the trick. Track your progress physically. Write down one sentence about what you learned each day. Make the invisible neurological growth visible to your conscious brain so you get that dopamine hit of reward prediction error.
It is the small, quiet daily devotions to your own intellectual and emotional growth that will completely revolutionize the landscape of your life over the course of a single year.
Now, as you step into this identity and start actively building this value, a very interesting, highly complex new challenge is going to happen. And this is a teaser for our next deep dive into these topics.
Oh, this next one's going to be good.
Once you acquire the skills and you have the leverage, a new question shows up on your doorstep. The question shifts from how do I earn more to, once you start building massive value, how do you stand out in a hyper-saturated, incredibly noisy world without burning yourself out in the process?
How do you position your unique value so that the absolute best opportunities find you faster and with less friction?
That strategic positioning is exactly what we are going to unpack in our next deep dive. It's about moving from raw competence to undeniable market positioning. It's going to be an absolute game changer.
I cannot wait to get into the mechanics of that discussion.
Yeah.
But before we let you go today, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you transition back into your daily routine.
Leave them with something to think about.
We've spent this entire time dissecting the reality that your attention, your regulated energy, and your compounded skills are your true modern wealth. They are the actual bank account of your potential.
Right.
So as you go about the rest of your day, as you open your phone, as you interact with colleagues, ask yourself this one question. If your attention, your energy, and your skills are your most precious finite currencies, Who or what are you currently allowing to spend your wealth without your explicit permission?
Oof. That is a heavy, necessary question to sit with. Who is spending your wealth without your permission?
It really makes you evaluate everything.
It really does. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your focused attention. And thank you for your willingness to step out of the old programming and grow.
Remember, you are exactly where you need to be. You are not late to the party. You are not behind. You are just early in the beautiful process of building something magnificent.
We are right here, walking alongside you every step of the way. Have a wonderful, intentional, value-building week.